All right, let's talk about emotional maturity. What if I told you that the key to the whole thing, it all boils down to just one single question? And I'm willing to bet it's not the question you think it is. Let's dive in.
So, what is this magic question? Well, it's not the one you ask yourself an hour later in the shower, when you're replaying the whole argument and thinking of all the clever things you should have said. Nope. This is the question you ask yourself right in that fiery moment, before you react, when your patience is totally shot and your ego is just screaming at you to fight back. And here's where it gets really interesting. This has absolutely nothing to do with how smart you are, how old you are, or how cool and calm you manage to look on the outside. It's a totally hidden, internal skill, and honestly, a lot of people go their whole lives without ever learning it. But once you get it, it changes everything. Okay, so first things first. We need to tear down a huge myth about what emotional maturity even is. Because, let's be real, most of us have got it completely backward. We all have this picture in our heads, right? The emotionally mature person is the one who's like a Zen master, never gets angry, always stays calm, always the bigger person. But what that actually is a lot of the time is just emotional suppression. It's just clamping down on your feelings, and that leads to exhaustion and avoidance. Real maturity isn't about feeling nothing, it's about what you do with the feelings you have. Look, emotionally mature people are still human. They get their feelings hurt, they get triggered, they feel jealous and insecure and misunderstood, just like the rest of us. The difference, the real secret, isn't that they don't have these feelings. It's all about what they choose to do next. And that choice brings us to this really critical idea, the difference between a reaction and a response. Think of this as the main event, the real battleground where all our emotional growth happens.
Okay, so your first reaction, it's totally automatic. It's not a choice you make. It's more like a program running in the background of your brain? It's built from old wounds, ancient survival patterns, things you learned as a kid, all that stuff. You don't choose to feel that first flash of anger or that sting of hurt. It just happens.
So this is where emotional maturity comes in. It's the ability to create a pause, just a tiny little space, a gap between what happens to you and what you do about it. And in that tiny gap, that's where all your power is. That's where you find the ability to consciously respond instead of just automatically reacting. So how do you create that pause? You use a tool. It's a simple question, but it is so powerful. It completely changes the entire dynamic of a situation. Okay, you ready? Here it is. The one question. In that heated moment, you stop and you ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now and why? It sounds so simple, right? But asking it honestly can be, well, profoundly uncomfortable. Because think about it. The default reaction, the immature reaction, is all about asking, how do I win this fight? Or how do I make sure I don't look bad? It's about protecting your ego. This question does the opposite. It shifts the focus completely inward. It's not about combat, it's about curiosity. So why does this one little question work so well? It's because it forces you, it makes you look inward for the real source of the feeling, instead of just immediately pointing the finger and blaming something or someone else.
And let's be honest, asking this question is hard. It's hard because the honest answer is usually not something we want to admit. Underneath all that anger and frustration, the real truth is often something much more vulnerable. It's, I feel rejected, or I feel insecure, or I feel like I don't matter right now. And this, right here, is the whole game. The hard inward truth is something like, I feel unimportant. But the easy outward blame is to yell, you never care. See the difference? Emotional immaturity takes that vulnerable feeling and shoots it outward as an attack. Emotional maturity is about owning it as your own feeling first. Here's a good way to think about it. It's like your ego and your actual raw emotion are playing for two different teams. The ego's goal is simple. Be right, win the argument, period. But your core emotion, all it really wants is to be understood, to be heard. This question helps you tune out the screaming ego and listen to the right voice. Okay, so we've done all this tough internal work, right? We're looking at our ego, our hurt. What's the payoff? Where does this actually make a difference in the real world? Well, it's a total game changer in the one area it matters most, our relationships. And when you start asking this question consistently, the benefits are huge and they're practical. First, you stop those destructive cycles, either exploding with anger or just shutting down completely.
Then you stop blaming everyone else for your feelings. And from there, you can actually start communicating what's really going on. You still might argue, but the arguments become so much less destructive because you're talking about the real issue. Now, I need to be super clear about something. This is not about becoming a doormat. Emotional maturity does not mean you just tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you stay silent to keep the peace. And it definitely doesn't mean accepting less than you deserve. It's actually the complete opposite. It's about getting the clarity you need to set and defend your boundaries in a healthy way. Really, what it all boils down to is this: knowing why something is affecting you. When you can finally say, you know what, this isn't really about you leaving the dishes in the sink. This is about me feeling ignored and unimportant. Bam, you've just moved from chaos to clarity. And that self-knowledge, that's the foundation. That's how you build relationships that don't just survive conflict, but actually get stronger because of it. So, here's what I want you to take away. The next time you feel it, that heat rising in your face, that tightness in your chest, I want you to try to remember this. Just for a second, pause and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now and why? Because that pause and that one single question, that's where all the magic happens. That's where you take your power back.